hello, and welcome to Coffee with the Carterman. Really big show today, really big show as usual. Um, going to start off, of course, with the Hot Corner News and Views. Um, Hot Corner News and Views of the week. We like to take a look at things, sometimes a little different perspective than the other podcasts, TV shows, TV news. Of course, definitely a different perspective than Caitlin Collins, Dana Bash. Yeah, dumbest woman on the face of the earth. If she wasn't a CIA plant, she'd be bussing tables at Howard Johnson's. And of course, Kristen Welken. So definitely different perspective than any of those, and even and somewhat a different perspective from a lot of the other podcast influencers out there. All of on the conservative side, all of whom I like. Officer Tatum, Mark Dice, the rest of them. Different perspective because remember, this was what I did. Politics is what I did for nearly 50 years. I hate to say that, at the highest levels in Washington. So I know a little bit about what these people are really up to. But then in today's Hot Corner, that we're going to start off definitely not politics. You cannot review this week's news without paying tribute to Dolly Parton, and we're going to do that. It just, I'll be honest with you, it makes me choke up even to think about it. Some people you expect to live forever, and Dolly was one of those. Live forever and look the same, and wonderful person. So we're going to talk a little bit about Dolly, and then we're going to talk about Ukraine, and the Hot Corner News and Views. Let me just put real quickly into perspective for you. When one side, you're being lied to. You're being lied to by the news media, obviously. And I'm sorry, but the Trump administration and every foreign leader, that new idiot in England, Macron with his wife, whatever that is, and Gertz, I have a feeling that when he's not around in public, Gertz wears skirts. I'm just telling you, I'm just giving you my opinion. But at any rate, all of them are lying to you. Let me put that in perspective for you. When one side, Russia, has cut off the entire seaport access of the other side, the access they depend on to survive, when they're about ready to take Odessa completely, and the other side, Ukraine, is bombing Amazon, not even bombing, sending drones over to blow up Amazon warehouses. Don't believe the lies of the media and unfortunately the administration that, well, the side blowing up the Amazon warehouses is really winning the war. No, it ain't happening. I'll go into all that later more. And plus we'll go into it some with our insider expert interview today. I have a doozy for you today. I swear to God. This guy, some of you will remember from the old days, the previous Coffee with the Carterman. There we go. Coffee with the Carter. Left my sign. When you say him, you're going to remember this guy. Okay. He is, in my opinion, the foreign policy expert, and has been as long as I've known him, dating back to our time together at the Washington Times more than 20 years ago. Incredible guy. Incredible knowledge and a wonderful person to boot. So we're going to do expert interview with this gentleman, and finally finish up with my bold prediction of the week, which could make you money. I'm just going to tell you, it's a bold prediction that could make you money, venturing a little outside of my usual sphere, a little into the area of economics. So we'll get to the bold prediction here, but let's start off with our tribute to Dolly Parton, okay? Let's start off with our tribute to Dolly Parton. I'm 80 years old in 2 weeks, week and a half, whatever it is. And I'm going to tell you something. When you get older, you look back and you realize that you've known very few people who simply were irreplaceable. And Dolly Parton was one of them, a one-of-a-kind entertainer, talent, and human being. Okay, I can paraphrase Shakespeare for you. Some of you are going to remember this from Hamlet, Act 1, Scene 2. I'm going to paraphrase it. She was a lady. Take her for all in all. We shall not look upon her like again. We simply won't. We simply will not. Matter of fact, I paid tribute to her on my Facebook page this past Tuesday, when she passed away, as soon as I got the news. And had over 1,000 views, most I've ever had. That's the kind of feelings people had about Dolly Parton. So, Gary, let's take a look at what I said then, because I still feel the same way today. It's the Carterman out here on the front porch for a front porch commentary. Normally, as you know, we have a little fun together out here, almost every time we're out here, but not today. Not today, because Carterman, I think, like most Americans today, is a little saddened, a little sobered by the passing of Dolly Parton. Some folks you just think are just going to be around forever. You know, they're part of your life. From the time you're young, I remember back in graduate school out in Oklahoma, laying on the floor and watching her and Porter Wagner. They would, and I would think to myself, what a beautiful girl. And then they would sing, the two of them a duet, I think we found the right combination. And I got to be honest with you, I would think to myself, that is definitely not it. But they were a great combination because she was such a gracious person. And then time went on through the years, and you watched her and just became more and more impressed with her, every aspect of her. And you realize this is more than just a beautiful young girl. This is a beautiful person. And then today you get that shocking news. Shocking despite the fact she was 80, she was my age, but you just, as I said, you expect some people to be part of your life forever. And I appreciated what her family spokesperson said, that her bodyguard, he said, you know, she's left this life, but she's in the arms of Jesus. And I think there's no doubt she is. She is a very devout, witnessing Christian, and brought us all blessings in that respect. And so you think to yourself, as we observe her passing, I'm so glad the President's going to put the flag at half-mast. You think to yourself, with Dolly, the same song, we sing at every funeral, my family, my father, my mother, my sister-in-law. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all get to heaven, we'll sing and we'll shout the victory. Now go with Dolly as well. God bless you all, and God bless your family. So that's it. That's what I said on Tuesday, and as I said, I still feel the same way today. Let me make a point of clarification about her and Porter. And if you remember that show, it was like the early 70s, 1971, 72. You looked at Dolly, and particularly back then, she was a really prized beauty. And Porter, every day you looked in the mirror and said to yourself, thank God I don't look like Porter Wagner. Porter was so skinny that sometimes you would confuse him with the mic stand. Okay. So that was quite a contrast. It was definitely not physically, it was not the right combination, as the song said, but when they sang, of course it was, and in large part because, well, they were both talented, and she was such a wonderful person. I think one of the people who paid tribute, and I think really summed it up well, was another person I like, and I think he's not one of these glib type people, but when he speaks, most of the time you say this guy's talking from the heart, and in this case, I think he really did, because he knew Dolly. They made a movie together, Rhinestone, which I thought was very good. I thought it was a lot of fun. They both obviously had a lot of fun in the movie. So let's see what Sylvester had to say.
I just heard that Dolly Parton passed away, and this strikes me very hard because I felt She was a brilliant woman, so outgoing, so nice. She would come onto the set and say, "Hi, y'all," to every one of the crew members. Everyone loved her. And I don't think people realize what a brilliant mind she had. She was just incredible. I used to call her the pioneer woman that could do everything to survive, and she did. And I remember, this is a crazy story. We were down in Tennessee filming, and when we had a little time off, they took us to a horse farm. And down there, they bred these Tennessee walking horses. They're high stepping, very, very difficult horse to ride if you don't know what you're doing. So the guy goes, no problem. Get on my favorite gray stallion. So I get on, and he goes, and put Dolly on behind you. I said, is this horse used to like double decker? I don't get it, you know? And he goes, no problem. Now, I've ridden horses all my life, but this thing was gigantic. It's like riding a building. So I said, Dolly, you okay? Sure am, honey. Go ahead. So I kicked the horse, and it starts moving, prancing. Then all of a sudden, oh, I have to add this. The hoofs are this long. They're not like regular horse hoofs. It's like being on stilts, the horse. That's what gets them to do this. So it taps, taps, taps. Everything is doing well. It sounds beautiful. We look glamorous up there. And then the horse stubs its toe. It trips. And then we start to roll forward. And, oh no, it's like everything's going in slow motion. And Dolly goes, are we falling? I go, we are falling. And this horse rolled all the way down, and we cascaded off of it and landed in the grass, and the horse rolled beside us. Oh my God, we would have been a couple of pancakes. But she got up laughing. He goes, let's do that again. Oh God. So being macho, I said, of course, I was just waiting for you to ask. I miss you, Dolly. I love you. Sad.
There you go. Summed it up with that last word, didn't he? Sad. Very, very sad. And one of the things I loved about Dolly is, I would say this is somebody who spent his life in politics. She refused to be drawn into it. She just did. And the left-wing media and her friends in the entertainment media, all of whom are left-wing kooks for the most part, would constantly try and lure her into taking a political stand, knowing she was vastly popular and could have some influence. And she would just tell them, no, I'm not doing it. I don't do that. As a matter of fact, very interesting to me, Dolly twice refused the Medal of Freedom. Now, man, I want you to think about that. That's the highest award you can get in this country as a civilian, given to you at the White House. They put it around your neck, the whole thing. Dolly said no, both to Biden and to Trump, because she said, I don't want people to think I'm trying to influence their politics. What a wonderful, wonderful a difference from the average immensely popular entertainer, wonderful person. She was, and as I mentioned at the outset, deeply devout Christian. And I'll close with my tribute to Dolly on this. Years ago, I think it was 1989, she was featured on the CMA Awards, right, to do a solo. And she chose to do a solo, He Is Alive, about Christ rising from the dead. I get a little choked up when I talk about this. So there she was on television. I was watching with my father, a retired Methodist minister. He was about 75, 76 at the time. And he had been an evangelical Methodist minister. I used to joke with him and say, when you left the Methodist Church, I think when you retired, I think you took the last Bible with you. But we're standing there watching Dolly sing this. And if you haven't seen it, watch it. It is just uplifting. It's inspiring. And I looked around, and the tears were rolling down my father's face. That's how touched he was by that performance, because it was so real, and you knew that that's what Dolly Parton believed, and that's what guided her life, and that's what made her so irreplaceable. So there you go. There's our tribute to a wonderful person who we're all going to miss. We're all going to miss. And God bless her family. God bless her soul into the hands of Jesus, as her spokesperson said. All right. There we go. A little tough to get through there, and I apologize. But, I think now we're going to move on to the politics, or our other hot corner topic. All right. So here we are. We are now deep in the hot corner itself. All right. So let's go there.
There's a drive down the third base line. Robinson dives into foul territory, up with it, off balance, throw to first, and
Oh man, remember the hot corner is third base. Yeah, remember a couple episodes ago I told you I never wanted to play there because they hit the ball too hard at you. Nobody played it better than Brooks Robinson, the greatest third baseman in history. Maybe I'm a little biased because remember, I was raised in inner city Baltimore. Spent a lot of time in those bleachers at Memorial Stadium watching him make catches like that. Brooks at the hot corner, So we'll bring that up every time we do our hot corner. I didn't want to bring it up before Dolly because it's a little different hot corner topic than usual. But now we're going to get to the real hot corner news and views stuff. This change now. Now you're going to see. You're going to go, man, this guy's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and it's true because I'm really going to get. Now it's time to get tough about stuff. I'm reminded when I was a kid. I don't know how many of you remember this, but Bobby Kennedy was known as just a ruthless politician. A lot of people don't know that because all we remember, is the assassination and the good side of him, where he would say, Herodotus said, man is not made for safe havens. And he tried to, I think, in my opinion, change the world for the better. But he was a ruthless politician. There was no doubt about it. I mean, he was cutthroat, unlike his brother Jack. And I remember him telling about taking breakfast to his wife Ethel in bed one morning, there at Hickory Hills. And after he handed her breakfast, she said, "This is so nice of you, Robert. Thank you so much. You're so kind." He's finished up. He handed it to her. Said, "Well, good. Now I can go back to being ruthless." Now I'm at the hot corner. I go back to being ruthless. All right. And I'm going to be ruthless. because we're going to talk a little bit about Ukraine. We'll talk more with our expert interview, insider interview guest. But look, let's face it. I told you earlier, when your side is sending drones over to bomb Amazon warehouses, whatever they call their Amazon over there, and the other side is gobbling up your land by the mile, including your seaport. Okay, Ukraine cannot use the Black Sea anymore. It can't ship grain. All right, its major product or any other food stuff. That's it. Let me tell you something. That war needs to be settled now. Okay, and that porno queen grifter Zelensky, I know he likes to keep it going as long as he can to fill his pockets as deeply as possible. But let me tell you something. That's not good for the Ukrainian people, because there's not going to be a Ukraine left if they don't settle it soon. And frankly, I think that's why Ratcliffe, just the CIA Generalissimo, just made his secret mission to Russia to plead with them. Let's try and arrive at a deal here. Well, he better tell the other side, Zelensky. Because let me show, I'll tell you why. Let me show you why I believe. Look, this is what I believe. If you disagree, more power to you. More power to you. But here's why I believe Zelensky keeps this war going. 20 million Ukrainians have fled the country. They've been for years dragooning people off the street and sending them to the front line with no training. And now they say they're going to start dragooning and drafting, which in their terms means dragooning women. Why would Zelensky keep this going? Look, it's the Donbass is gone. Okay, you're going to let Russia take the whole quarter to Odessa and then Odessa. Remember, Odessa was once Russia, so Russia may say, we're just taking it back to the homeland. But I think here's why Zelensky keeps it going. Okay, look at those figures of money that he has raked in during this war. Remember, Trump said the guy's a great salesman. $500 billion. $500 billion. You might say, well, it all went to weaponry. They just arrested another one of his top aides for stealing money. Remember earlier, his top aide and best friend they arrested for pocketing money. You don't think Zelensky is pocketing? I would say he's probably pocketed 100 million by now. Minimum. Guess we know that much is missing. He admitted that, but I don't know where it went. Check your back pocket, Follow. Check your back pocket. All right. This, you say, Carter, why are you so down on him? Why are you calling him a porno queen? That's what he did before the United States installed him as president. Yeah, that's his comedy TV show. Isn't that lovely? Isn't that lovely? Isn't that lovely? Okay. Or sometimes he'd switch off. Hello, Mr. President. Say greedy grifter, folks. He's a greedy grifter. The longer the war starts, the more money he makes. And don't forget, he was put in by our CIA. He was put in by our CIA and our State Department. Valerie, I can't remember her name now, it'll come to me, was over there, helped organize the Maidan coup, where they threw this gentleman, the duly elected president of Ukraine, out of office. Let me make sure I pronounce his name right. Viktor Yanukovych. Okay. He had been elected president, and our CIA just threw him out of office. We did it. He had been elected in a free and fair election. He had got about 50% of the votes, about 40, I think 45, 46 of his opponent. And he was ready for an election another year. They're supposed to have elections every 5 years in Ukraine. Every 5 years. Well, let's see. Zelensky went in 2019. This guy had years earlier been thrown out. Okay, the duly elected president. We staged a coup. We did it because he liked Russia and was trying to make trade deals with Russia. So much for democracy. So they stick this guy in, Zelensky, get him to change his clothes, take off his women's outfits and his high heels, and put on the tight-fitting black shirt and look tough to people. Please stop it. Please stop parading. And absolutely shell the hell out of Donbass, okay? They had done it over and over again. They had killed countless thousands of innocent civilians because the people of that region didn't want to be part of Ukraine. They wanted to secede. They felt they should be part of Russia. And if you don't understand why, look at the election results when the gentleman whose name Yanukovych was elected. Okay, in case you can't see him, these are from the regions that are part of Russia now. I'm sorry, but they're part of Russia now. Donetsk, 91% of the vote. 91% of the vote went to Yankovich. That's why Zelensky and his cronies decided to just bomb these people into oblivion. Luhansk, 89% of the vote. These people did not want to be part of a country where they didn't even speak the same language. They spoke Russia. They didn't have the same traditions. They wanted to go back to what they considered their motherland. All in all, 78% of the vote of the people in those regions that Russia now has frankly annexed, considered themselves Russians, and 78% voted for the man who was friendly to Russia, who our CIA didn't want it, so they ousted him. Okay, so they ousted him. And now we have Zelensky raking in the money. We know he has some mansions around the world, I think one in Alexandria, Egypt, and penthouses in various other capitals around the world. He's very well fixed. He's very well fixed, like all his friends are. You say, oh, no, it's just his friends were stealing money. Remember, his one friend was caught stealing 100 million or so and had the gold-plated toilet seat. And that was one of Zelensky's bosom buddies, one of his best friends. But, Polo didn't know anything. Oh my, what a surprise. Stop it. The guy is a outright thief, and the longer he prolongs that war, the longer money he makes, more money he makes, and that's why he announced just the other day, "Oh no, we're not going to have elections. No, no, you can't have an election during a war." Oh really? Well, Mr. Zelensky, um, trot over in your high heels and dig up Lincoln and ask him about it. 1864, remember the slogan, "Don't change horses in midstream" of an election. How about Franklin Roosevelt? Several elections while he was president, the war was going on. So it's a way dictators stay in power. Once they seize power, no more elections. You know, we hate Ortega down in Nicaragua because he declared after he was, if you recall, he made a mistake of holding an election and lost. So when he finally got back into power and when he actually won a fair election, he announced right after that, no more elections, no mas, no mas. So that's what Zelensky has said. And Zelensky, partially for the same reason Ortega, helps pad your pockets when you're the one who controls the flow of money. So there you go. There you have what's happening in Ukraine. I think that's why Radcliffe flew there. Also to beg Russia to stop supplying high tech to Iran so they can target where to send their missiles. And maybe they can cut a deal. We stop propping up this little dictator in Ukraine. If Russia pulls back its troops and says, okay, what we annexed is it. From the beginning, they said that was all we wanted. And now we're not going to take Suma or Odessa, which they are if this continues. And bombing Amazon warehouses is not going to enable Zelensky to win the war. It enables our press here and our politicians say, well, they're winning. Look at that warehouse burning. It doesn't work that way, folks. There's an Amazon warehouse about 10 blocks from me. And if somebody blew it up right now, it wouldn't bring the entire United States to its knees. So that's just, let's always try to face reality, okay? And that is the reality of the situation over there. And they ought to get it over with. They ought to talk seriously with Putin. Get it over with. He has said over and over again he's willing to negotiate. He's willing to pull back just to the annexed territories. He's not going to give them up because, as I just showed you, they never wanted to be part of Ukraine. They voted to be part of Russia, and then they voted to elect a president who was friendly to Russia, and then eventually voted to be part of Russia. So that's just the way it is, folks. It's just the way it is. And those who say, but he invaded, well, he was lied to twice about Putin, about the Minsk agreements, where he was lied to in 1990 by James Baker, Secretary of State under George Bush. Will never put any weapons near the Russian border in Ukraine. We never will ask Ukraine to be NATO or to NATO. That was a lie. 2 Minsk agreements he was lied to. We'll never make them part of NATO. That turned out to be a lie. And he finally said, enough is enough. We need a buffer zone, and that's a buffer zone of states, oblasts that wanted to be part of Russia as they had been before. So that's where we are. Sorry, that's my opinion. Now, some of you are going to strongly disagree. If so, write to me. I will. If some of you, if you have a strong argument on the other side, I'll even have you on. We'll talk about it. Write to me at clclews@gmail.com, clews@gmail.com. I'll be happy to hear from you. Thank you, Gary, and absolutely respond. This is not one-sided. I don't speak ex cathedra. I'm not the Pope, and this is not a flatus, words from on high. All right, again, not the Pope. And speaking of the Pope, let's close up the hot corner with this item, okay? With this little item. The Pope, the gay media, the homosexual media celebrating because once again, this Pope who dresses like father, like mother, and calls himself father. This Pope um, has decided that he wants to appoint close underlings, the hierarchy of the Catholic Church, who are pro LGBTQXYZ plus voices. Yeah, yeah. Here's how one of the homosexual publications celebrated the article. I'll read it to you. The article focuses on the installation of 4 reportedly pro-homosexual and pro-transgender bishops. Okay, 4 pro-transgender bishops. In other words, Sophie Cunningham takes a stronger stand on that perversion of self-mutilation than the Pope. Maybe they should have the first woman Pope. The 4 he appointed were James Cicecchio in February to head the Archdiocese of New Orleans. This Pope may be a lot of awful things, but he's not dumb. With that weird little smile on his face all the time, he knows how to infiltrate the U.S. and help us turn, the Catholic Church in the U.S. turn very much pro-transgender. Bishop Ramon Bejarano, Monterey, California, U.S. again. And then he decided to make sure that he had a good person over there in Germany, Christian Wirtz in Germany, and Thomas Hennen, again in the U.S. And the article points out that perhaps the most exciting is Bishop Bejarano, the former San Diego, California auxiliary bishop, who celebrated an all are welcome LGBT themed Pride Mass. A Pride Mass, during which a drag queen activist was featured as the speaker. Okay, he's now the new high-ranking bishop in Monterey, California. Now, let's think about this for a second. The Bible in the Old and New Testament condemns homosexuality. The Bible repeatedly, from Genesis on, says God created man and woman in his own image. Apparently not according to Pope Leo. Not according to Pope Leo. Let me just close with this. If you are a Catholic, you're right. You're approaching your last chance to stand up and fight back. I'm just telling you. You might as well face it. You're being taken over. These plants by this pro-drag queen, transgender, I'm going to use a word, brace yourself, freaks. These pro-transgender freaks. This Pope is determined to destroy the very fabric of the biblical admonitions, condemnation against homosexuality. Remember, the Bible just doesn't say that's a sin, you shouldn't do that. I think it was Paul who wrote, it is an abomination. And it says the same thing in the Old Testament. Okay. Just ask the late not so great homosexuals in Sodom and Gomorrah how God feels about that. But not this Pope. He's all for it. So he is making sure to place in key positions throughout the United States those who will push the drag queen, homosexual, transgender agenda. That's your report from the Vatican. I feel like I should be Guido Carducci here. Okay. But it's just the way it is. And it's tragic. One more item that I want to add. I'm adding this just because it bugs me. I'm just going to say it bugs me. So I'm going to share it with you, okay? You may recall that I had said in one of my promos, I do a daily promo for Coffee with the Carterman on Facebook. One of my promos, I said I was going to have a Haitian minister on from right here near where I live, and because he had talked about his people were afraid to come to church. Now let me be clear, I misread the article in the left-wing radical York Record. I thought it said he was pointing out that the crime in York is so bad, which it is. It's just the mayor of the city has unleashed Section 8 gangs onto the streets now, including one attacked our street here, and we fought him off. But I thought that's what he's saying. And so I called him and said, let's talk about your being an interview guest on Coffee with the Carterman, the nation's #1 political podcast. But then as we were talking, it turned out that this Haitian minister, I had misunderstood. He wasn't worried about crime. People being shot outside his door by Section 8, by the Section 8 constituents of this mayor they have in York now. No. He was upset because his parishioners were scared of ICE. Let me make sure we understand what I'm saying here. His illegal alien parishioners were scared of ICE, and so he was upset by that. I said, wait a minute. I said, are you an illegal? He said, no, I'm a citizen. I said, well, that's wonderful. My wife's a citizen too. The U.S. government made us pay $25,000 to secure her citizenship. All right. I've told you before, when I went to Honduran embassy, 13, 14 years ago, the ambassador told me, if you want to bring her here legally, forget about it. Obama doesn't want legal immigrants. He only wants the illegals. I said, well, watch me. And she's here as an American citizen now. And so this guy said, yeah, he was an American citizen. I said, well, why are you defending people who broke into our country? And you know what his response was? It's a Haitian, by the way. Well, the settlers who came to America stole the land from the Indians and broke into this country. We need to send that guy back too. Okay? Just send him back to Haiti. Look, I am so tired. Look, all of my wife's friends and relatives are illegals. I've never heard one of them, not one of them, admit to the fact they broke into another country and are stealing what we have here. Okay? And here is this Haitian minister, man of God, who I would think knows the 10 Commandments says, thou shalt not steal, defending people who stole into a country and steal what we have. And I explained to him, you need to do a little more homework on the pilgrims, okay, who came into Plymouth Rock, but known as Patuxent at the time, because there were no Indians there. There had been a plague in Patuxent where they landed from 1616 to 1619. All right, and those that didn't die left. They figured this disease was coming up out of the ground. That's where the pilgrims landed. There was no stealing of land. Plus, they paid Squanto. They found the chief of the tribe that had been there and paid him. I don't know too many of my wife's relatives who are paying the U.S. government for what they've taken in this country. I think they're living off the U.S. government, like this gentleman's Haitians. Let me add this, okay? If I were from Haiti, of all places, I would not be telling other countries how they should live, all right? I would simply not have that kind of gall, okay? That kind of pompous, know-it-all attitude. If I'm from Haiti, if you said to me, Carter, when you die, do you want to go to hell or Haiti? Let me think for a second. Well, I guess Haiti is marginally better. These people are here because they help make a mess of the country they're coming from. And I'm sorry, it's that way with every illegal alien. If you've made a mess of the country that you're fleeing, probably the proper thing to do is not tell the country whose land you're stealing how they're supposed to live. Maybe, just maybe, those living in the land you fled to don't want to be like the country you came from. Just a thought. Just a thought. Okay. So that's our hot corner for today. And I know I went a little astray, since I went that far astray. And we're waiting here on our insider expert interview guest. I want to say something else that some of you who I know believe in a woman's reproductive rights. In other words, murdering infants in the womb. Up to 9 months if you live in 9 states in the District in Columbia, Newly, Massachusetts, where all the women giggled and chortled while the murder papers were signed, the death warrants were signed. If you have to take a look at this trial. I think the woman's name is Clancy, who murdered her 3 children, little tiny, one baby, a little baby, and 2 toddlers. Took a rope, it looks like to me, some sort, and strangled them to death one after another. And, the evidence coming out, several top psychologists have now said she was not suffering from postpartum blues. She claimed she was in some sort of a trance. And they said, that's just not true because we have her phone records. We have her conversations with her husband, where to buy some food on the way home. He said she was not in a trance. This was premeditated murder. Now, that's bad. It's hideous. It's hideous. What makes it even worse are the women outside the courtroom who are cheering on this Clancy woman and want her to be declared totally innocent. Imagine maybe some of them came down from Massachusetts after they cheered on the governor's death warrants for the unborn. Come down and let's cheer on killing the born. That's where we are now today. We got a problem in this country, folks, and it was totally predictable. Once you had so many American women cheer on the murder of babies in the wombs, well, it's their reproductive rights. No, it's not at that point. They made their decision back when they decided to have unprotected sex. That was their decision. The decision to kill a live baby is not in their hands, okay? And it was inevitable that once these same women got the right to murder the baby in the womb, that they would say, well, maybe after it comes out of the womb for a couple of years, if you don't want them around, just get rid of them too. It was inevitable. I'm sorry. That's the way the devil works. Period. All right. Whew. I told you I was going to be ruthless. There we are. All right. Our guest is here. And let me, before we bring him on, tell you a little bit about him. Dr. Jim Robbins. This is a great international expert, okay, particularly in military matters. Let me read I'm just going to read you a little bit because I can't memorize it all. It's too long and very impressive. I'm a little envious. He's Senior Vice President of Research and Business Development at IWP, National Security Columnist for USA Today, Senior Fellow in the National Security Affairs at the American Foreign Policy Council, former assistant to the Office of the Secretary of Defense, and in 2007 was awarded the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Joint Meritorious Civilian Service Award. Wow. You can't get much higher than that. He writes for the Washington Post, the Washington Times, Wall Street Journal, National Review, and you have probably seen him on Fox News repeatedly. I think OAN, Newsmax, Al Jazeera, where guy's got guts. He goes on and tries to set the Arabs straight about what's happening in the Mideast. So let's welcome my friend and this true top military expert, international expert, Dr. Jim Robbins. Jim, welcome aboard.
Hey, Carter, how you doing?
It is great to see you again, buddy. I think, what's one of the amazing things, in addition to your resume, is you look the same as you did when I first met you 20, what was it? It was over 20 years ago, right? At the Washington Times.
Yeah, well, it was during the Obama first term. So if you can remember that far back.
I can barely remember. You remember Branch Rickey? You remember Branch Rickey, right? He owned the Dodgers, right? And he lived
Yeah.
to be like 90 years old. And they asked him one day, what's it like getting old, right? And I think about this all the time now. I'm about to turn 80. And his reply was, well, when you get old, first you forget names, then you forget faces, then you forget to zip your fly, and finally you forget to unzip it. So, so it makes me feel very old when I think that you and I first met well over 20 years ago, and it's great to see you again. And now to the topics at hand. You are an expert. I mean, you are truly an acknowledged expert on international affairs. And I watch you whenever you're on TV, whenever I can. I read your columns. I want to first talk. So we're going to hit some hot spots around the world. Israel, okay? The war in the Mideast. All right. You and I have corresponded a little bit through text messages. So I think, my feeling is Trump has blown it, and he blew it when he declared, when we were within days of winning the war, finishing Iran off, and he decided, I'm going to call a unilateral ceasefire and allow them to totally rebuild. What do you think, Jim? You're the expert, not me.
Well, I think we got into an issue with all of this when we stopped talking about winning wars and we started talking about managing conflicts.
Wow.
That's sort of my big picture take on this. And, that goes way back. You could look at Vietnam that way. You could look at a bunch of things that way. Reagan in Lebanon, or, Bush in Iraq, whatever. We stopped talking about victory. We stopped talking about winning. And I think this was a case of that. Like, we just didn't do everything that we could have done. And, once you start using force, like for real, like, killing their leader and stuff like that,
right?
You might as well get it done. Because if you don't get it done, you're leaving behind a group of people who are going to be out for revenge forever. And I don't care what deal we sign with Iran, if there is even a deal, they're going to cheat on it. They're going to get a nuclear weapon, and they may well use it because, we helped take out their supreme leader and a lot of other important people in their country. And there seems to be, let me just add, there seems to be this kind of belief in the United States that, yeah, we'll go over and like bomb them a little bit, whoever they are, another country. Yeah, we'll bomb them, and then we'll talk it out, and everything will be great. Well, what if someone treated us like that? Well, we'll bomb you a little bit, and then we'll talk later. No, we'd be out for blood.
Absolutely.
If that was the case. Well, guess what? Other countries get a little pissed off at us when we do that. When we go over and like bomb them a little bit and kill their people, they get mad at us. And then we hear from them again. So yeah, with Iran, we just got one way or another. Now, right now, I know it's the economic thing and we can talk about that, but yeah, we shouldn't have held back.
So we have now, and my theory is they use that time to rebuild. That's my theory, that they use that time to rebuild, and because they just seem to have missiles coming out of nowhere all the time.
Well, I mean, yeah, to say that they're okay, we sank their Navy, we destroyed their Air Force, great. But then the missile and drone threat is the real threat. Because their Air Force wasn't going to do anything. I mean, the planes that they did get off the ground were immediately shot down. Their Navy, it wasn't much to speak of, and now it's sunk. But yes, drones and missiles. If you look at the Ukraine war, for example, where this has really been developed, you can do a lot with drones and missiles if you're the weaker party. You know, Ukraine standing up to Russia. I mean, look at the Black Sea, where through the use of naval drones, the Ukrainians, or people without a navy, essentially, have driven off the Russian Black Sea fleet because they're afraid of them. So, yeah, we can degrade the Iranian, their drone forces, their missile, as the president has said, rightly, but they rebuild it, as you point out. It's not hard to do. They're getting secret material from China or from Russia, whoever they're getting it from, coming over the border, not through the strait where we have our blockade, but other ways. And they're just rebuilding this stuff. And, pretty soon, if it gets back to a shooting war, we're going to hear about it.
All right, you mentioned getting these weapons. I want to talk about a lot of the points you made because they're excellent. You mentioned getting these weapons. All right, I'm gonna, as long as you and I know each other, I'm pretty blunt even when I'm wrong. But
everyone knows that.
I got to tell you, you mentioned them getting these weapons and material from Russia and China. What kind of idiots like Vance and Jared, I can't remember his last name, the one that married Ivanka, and Waltz, what kind of idiots consider Pakistan a true, hands off, we're not involved here, we're really, all we want to do is be a middleman, we're not taking sides, when the economic corridor through Pakistan is where so many of the weapons from China and Russia are coming from. Am I wrong?
Well, we've had an interesting relationship with Pakistan over the years. Can we trust them? We can trust them to serve their own interests.
Yes.
And we have to go in with that idea. Like when they were helping us out in Afghanistan, well, they were getting a lot from that, in terms of just direct payments and then siphoning off things. They're always going to be working in their own interests. So if they're the mediator, and that's because they have relationships with the IRGC and people like that, they're the mediator. I mean, they're the people the Iranians want to talk to, them and Qatar. So whether our negotiators are aware of that, they shouldn't be going in there with like, oh, Pakistan's on our side and they're going to help us out. It's not like that. Pakistan is working for Pakistan, and they maybe have a mediation role, and that's fine. If they can open channels of communication, that's great. But we shouldn't go in there with the idea that their objectives are the same as our objectives. I mean, that's the most I can say. And I'm really hoping that the people that you named do not think that.
Well, I hope so too, but we know that Vance said, we love Pakistan. They're our best friends. Where is this guy coming from? I don't get, I'm going to be honest with you. I got a little problem with Vance because I think he's owned and operated by Peter Thiel. But this is a guy, he said that. We love Pakistan. They're our best friends.
Is this just diplomatic language? Is this just to keep things going? I don't know. I mean, sometimes I hear people say things in public and then in private you hear something else. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if he believes that Pakistan are our best friends. I really have to wonder about that. Given the Trump administration's outreach to India, for example, and the good relationship that they forged with India, the biggest country in the world by people, the biggest democracy, and the country of the future in some ways, overtaking China. India and Pakistan hate each other, and I mean, viscerally. Yeah, as you know, I mean, it's like they almost go to nuclear war every decade, and so to say, oh, Pakistan's our best friend when we're doing this outreach to India, I don't think the Pakistanis believe him. is my point. Pakistan's like, really? You can say that, but are we really? So whatever the vice president may say, I don't think the Pakistanis believe it.
Yeah, and let's put Pakistan into perspective. Let's say, for instance, that I'm 5'4", all right, instead of a tall, statuesque 5'10". Let's say I'm 5'4", and all my neighbors here on the block on Rockdale Avenue are 5'4", and down at the house at the end of the block, there's a guy who is 6'7" and speaks a different language, and he's been living there for years. Turns out he's a major terrorist. Let's say, yeah,
Right.
Osama bin Laden. And
Yeah.
when we say to Pakistan, you didn't notice, they say, what a surprise to us that is. These people are just inherently, I'm giving you my opinion, not to be trusted. And yet Vance loves them, and Gerard, and his partner is Whitcover, right? The guy that, yeah, his part. All right, let me ask you a question on this, because you really are the expert. I may blather, but you're the expert. If you were the president of the United States and you were negotiating with someone like Putin, okay, who really is, whether we like to admit it or not, the guy is a hardcore. I mean, he's a tough guy, and he knows what he wants, and he goes after it. Would you send 2 real estate agents to be your negotiators? Just asking.
Well, the funny thing about that is, and yeah, Putin, just to say, yeah, he's been in power since 1999. So, think about it. And in a tough neighborhood. So yeah, he's a
Yeah.
pretty tough guy. And the thing that I've always said about that with respect to Trump and his business background, because you get the same dig at Trump because he's a real estate guy.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to explain Trump's diplomacy to people, it's that he comes from a background of, the kid from Queens, the businessman, who broke into Manhattan, has done all these deals, dealing with that kind of diplomacy, which is different than the State Department style of diplomacy,
Yes.
which is very process oriented. It's very stately. It doesn't lead to anything good for us. It's I don't know what it is, but the traditional liberal State Department type of approach. So Trump he's trying new things. And so his thing is, well, if these business guys, he knows them, he trusts them, he's dealt with them in real estate deals, and they know how to do it. That's a perspective. So, I mean, I get it, right? Like the traditional way doesn't work, so try a new way. I don't think the new way is always working either.
No.
No. I think in some ways, Abraham Accords and all that, great, because that essentially is a real estate deal. So
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Dealing with Putin, he's got his own real estate in mind, and it's called Ukraine. And he's not going to deal that away, particularly the part of Ukraine he already occupies. And so I think our real estate guys have to look at it from that perspective. It's Putin's real estate deal, and he's not going to give it up.
Very well said. Excellent. Excellent. And speaking of real estate, let's talk, if we can, about Gaza. Okay. Now, there you have, talking about real estate deals. I think somehow Trump got in his mind that, first, let me say this. I've been to Gaza. Okay. I went to Gaza, I think 1991, and actually met with some Hamas leaders who were just vile people. In Ramallah, I met with the Arafat's leaders, and they may have been, vile people, but they were very polite and cordial. I just want to point that out. Not so Hamas. They were mean and nasty even back then. Why Sharon ever gave them Gaza, I have no idea. You can help set the record straight on that. So, but one thing I noticed about Gaza that shocked me is it is beautiful. It is a beautiful piece of land.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, go to Tel Aviv and look at the beaches, right? You get the same beaches in Gaza. It's the same environment, Mediterranean climate. It's beautiful. So, yeah, President Trump has good instincts when he talks about turning that into, beachfront paradise of some kind, to develop it. He looks at it as a real estate guy, he looks at development. So he wants to develop Gaza. And that's brilliant. Unfortunately, it's full of terrorists. And it's got a subway system, of terror tunnels, miles and miles more than New York City, that has to be destroyed. And, all these other problems of Gaza. Now, again, the real estate emphasis, right? The
Yeah.
board of peace and the peace plan that they have and the people who are working on that, the whole idea is to turn that into a huge development project, a huge
Yeah.
development opportunity.
Yes.
And to bring in countries like UAE and whoever else wants to invest in it, and the US maybe, and have it, instead of handing out money through UNRWA and the UN and do-gooder organizations that is then immediately translated into weapons and terrorism, they want to
And
bring in,
tunnels.
the tunnels, the whole bit. They want to bring in responsible people who will make an investment, not a giveaway, but an investment where they expect a return, and then to do it that way. And it will create jobs and prosperity and everything else. Well, the terrorists, of course, hate this because they're not going to profit from it.
No.
And so they're getting in the way of it, obviously. Maybe they can be bought off, co-opted like some organized crime, just like buy them off and give them
Yeah.
a piece of it.
Yeah.
That might be a plan. I don't know. But you're right about Gaza. Beautiful place. It just needs to be turned into something more like Israel.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And in Gaza, let's try and clear up a myth here, which has been propagated in order to, well, by those who are anti-Semitic, in order to smear the Jewish people, and that's that it is a genocide. That Bibi Netanyahu, whom I happen to like very, very much, folks, if you haven't read his autobiography yet, do so. That Bibi is a Hitlerian type who's committing genocide. That's just a blood libel against the Jewish people, Jim, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And we were hearing that line from like the beginning. I mean, October 7th massacre, that was an attempted genocide.
Absolutely.
And in fact, the Hamas held a meeting about a year earlier in which they had a discussion about what are we going to do after we take over Israel? How many Jews are we going to allow to live? The people who know how to run things, the water system, the electricity, and so forth. Okay, maybe they can live, but the rest of them out, or kill them. And this was explicit and covered by the news. I mean, this is what Hamas was talking about. With Israel, they've really held back from what they could do to Gaza. I mean, if you're talking about genocide,
Yes.
the intentional elimination of a people, that's not what's going on there. They're fighting a war. And yeah, war is bad and it's brutal. And it's made worse when you're fighting an enemy whose entire strategy is hide amongst the civilian population, build tunnels under hospitals and schools, put your headquarters in childcare clinics and stuff. I mean, that's who you're fighting. So yeah, it's going to be bad because the terrorists don't care. They don't have rules of engagement. They don't follow the rules of war. They're just terrorists. They're non-state actors who engage in this type of struggle, and intentionally, and they admit it. So yeah, it'll look bad. And then this whole genocide thing becomes part of their information operations because they've got all these allies in the media. They've got all these, student groups and people like, allies in the colleges and universities amongst the professors who are just, repeating this nonstop. They have their allies in the UN. They've got allies everywhere. And so they just say anything to make Israel look bad. Well, Israel didn't ask for this war. In fact, to your earlier point, they gave over Gaza as part of Land for Peace. That was the bumper sticker version, right? Land for Peace. We'll give you Gaza. You can run it. It'll be your, test case for the Palestinian homeland. And then later we'll figure out the West Bank. Well, we see how that worked. It just didn't work at all because you can't have Land for Peace with people who fundamentally want to annihilate you.
Yeah, let me ask you a question, because you are the expert here. I mean, you're a
You keep
historian.
saying that, but yeah, okay.
Well, it is true.
I
The,
don't know.
but you're also a great historian. I mean, your book on, what happened with the Tet Offensive is really
Mhm.
a textbook in what was done, or what should have been done. Whatever, Sharon, to me, was a great military leader, who I thought totally understood the nature of the enemy. Then he gets to be the prime minister, and he hands over Gaza to terrorists, lock, stock, and barrel. At which point the terrorists take over, kick out all the Jews. Matter of fact, I think Sharon removed the Jews,
Yeah,
and
the
and
settlements, yeah.
the terrorists destroyed all the businesses the Jews had built. Right? What possessed Sharon? Had he gone? We know he had a stroke and died. Had he? You think his mind had started to go or something before that?
I think there is this belief that it would work, that some kind of détente would work. They were coming out of the Intifada period, which they had, where again, Arafat, right, was given 97% of what he wanted,
Yep.
by Bill Clinton,
Yep.
and Arafat said, "No, screw you. I'm just going to start a wave of terrorism and bus bombings." Okay, great. That's
Was
useful.
it?
And then, okay, so fine, they came out of that. That settled down, and the idea was, okay, fine, let's just give them this little piece that they were going to get anyway under the Clinton plan, and we'll just give them that, and that can be the test case. Like, if you can manage Gaza, this little area, then you will show that you are good enough to maybe have your own country. Well, Hamas took over. They immediately started attacking different types of terror attacks, because it didn't just start on October 7th. Obviously,
Oh
they had
no,
been
no.
attacking all along. And the problem was, the Israelis, again, when we talked about conflict management, they thought this was a problem that could be managed. And maybe you've heard the expression mow the grass. Like, they would periodically do these
Yep.
these incursions into Gaza to kind of clean things up. They called that mowing the grass. Like, things get a little wild, we'll straighten it out. And they believed that over time, with this, sort of punitive measures, but letting them do their thing, that Hamas would become educated, right? Just like the Viet Cong, we were going to educate them, right? Like,
Right.
we could
Right.
teach them a damn thing. So that they would eventually, and they would come around, and instead of being like hardcore terrorists, they would just be like corrupt losers, like the Palestinian Authority. And Hamas understood this. It was something the Israelis called this the concept, or conceptia. Like, this was their plan. Like, okay, we'll just keep it under control, and it'll eventually fade away. And Hamas, they fed into that. They would say things or do things to make the Israelis think that's what was happening. Whereas at the same time, they were planning for Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, which was the October 7th thing, where they were going to like flood out of Gaza and go. The plan was to get all the way to the West Bank, like cross that, however long it is, 50 miles, 20 miles, and unite with this mass uprising that they believed was about to happen in the West Bank, and that they would, exterminate all of the Israelis. That was the plan. Okay, crazy ass plan, but a lot of people had to die. In any case, this is when the Israelis figured out that the conceptia was crazy,
Good.
right? That they figured out, wait a minute, that whole concept of land for peace, or Hamas is going to moderate, was insane. Now they know that. And that's why you're seeing what you're seeing in Gaza now, because the Israelis said, you know what, we gave you a chance, you blew it, so now you're going to do it our way.
Good. Good. One final question on that conflict, and then I have a final question I want to ask you.
Yeah,
But
sure.
I know this is in the minds of every viewer we have here, every good, solid Israel supporting conservative out there, which is, I am, advocate supporter of Israel. But I don't understand how Israel could have allowed a major invasion from Gaza across their border, and the people, the invaders there, long enough to do, to me, I don't think the Nazis ever did anything as bad as the Palestinians did on October 7th. But didn't they even have any Ring doorbells up? I mean, I don't get it. Didn't they have any surveillance of these people there? I don't get it.
Well, it was a classic case of intelligence failure. I mean, you could look at 9/11, you could look at Pearl Harbor, you know, other cases of surprise attack. And it's funny because if you look back at the signals that they had intercepted and the things that they knew, like that meeting I mentioned that happened a year before, where the Hamas people were talking about how they were going to reorganize Israel after they took it over. They were talking then about, well, we're going to have this big attack, you know, in the next couple years sometime, and we're going to take care of this. They were talking openly about that. Then, if you look at the what was coming out of Israeli intelligence, there was some notion, people saying, you know what, something's going on over there. We're not quite sure what it is, but something is brewing. And then, just a month before all this went down, there was an Israeli intelligence unit that was monitoring things and said, we're seeing them planning for breakthroughs of the fence. We're seeing them planning for hostage taking. You know, something is up. And in fact, they estimated this intelligence report that came out that said Hamas is about to do something, estimated that they would seize 250 hostages. The actual number, 251.
Unbelievable.
So,
Unbelievable.
and this was a month in advance. And this report went up the chain. And when it went up the chain, they said, well, we don't think so. So it wasn't the intelligence people, it was the policymakers who said, no, because it doesn't fit our model of what we're pursuing, so we're going to ignore it. And so that report was only distributed at very low levels, and clearly the Israelis were completely taken by surprise, even though they knew at some level, some intel people knew what was happening. So this isn't just another case of where when you have policymakers who just absolutely want to deny reality,
yes,
even though all of the signals are pointing one way, and they just say, no, we don't believe it. There's nothing you can do. I mean, what can you do when the intel side has given them everything and they just ignore it? That won't happen again. And a lot of this will come out once they start their comprehensive review of which has been on hold because of the war and because of elections. Once all that's done and they do the comprehensive review, everyone's going to learn about this.
That is an incredible revelation. Most Americans have no idea of what you said. All right, one final question. See if you agree with me. I said several weeks ago on this podcast that I believe within 5 years, the world is going to be divided into 4 spheres of influence. All right. Yeah. I think Russia is going to control the European sphere of influence. I think England, Germany, France, all those countries, they're non-entities now. Italy has always been a non-entity. And Russia, that is going to be, Europe is going to be their sphere of influence. I think China is going to control the Asian sphere of influence. I think the United States is going to be relegated to control the Western Hemisphere, all those little peonage countries down south of the border. And hey, I'm not being a racist, folks. My wife is Honduran. I love her to pieces. I have a home there. And I think the Iran, now I hate this, I think Iran is going to dominate the sphere's influence in the Mideast. What's your opinion?
Well, I hope not. I mean, I can see those trend lines too, but I really hope that doesn't happen. You know, if China really started to dominate in that area, then we would see a nuclear Japan pretty quickly. I mean, the Japanese aren't going to give up. Right. And whether or not Taiwan survives, Japan's not giving up. You know, if Iran is on the march in the Middle East, I mean, Israel has nuclear weapons. If Iran actually went nuclear, we would see a nuclear war. Guaranteed. The Israelis just wouldn't put up with it. But Europe, I mean, I'm very concerned about Europe, as you are. I mean, you say, Russian domination. What about some of these immigrant groups that are coming in?
Whew. Oh
You
my
know,
God.
the problem facing countries like the UK, France, uh, Germany, and others isn't necessarily Russian dominance. It's the dominance of these immigrant groups, and that's why we're seeing this sort of right-wing backlash happening. And things like the IRA saying they're going to liberate Ireland. you know like suddenly the boys are back, right, with the balaclavas and stuff.
The
I thought
boys
we
are
were done
back.
with that. No, they're
Yeah.
back. Okay. Look at what's going on in Britain, how their politics has been utterly dominated
Yeah.
by uh, these immigrant groups
No,
and concern for
England,
these
England
groups.
doesn't exist anymore, Jim. England is Pakistan, Europe. That's all it is.
Well, I'm saying when you have a labor government saying, okay, the cities are one thing, but there are too many white people in rural England, and we're going to have to start sending, people out there to essentially colonize these little English towns in the Midlands or wherever, the things that people think of as England.
Right?
That's like you want to talk about genocide. I mean, that's an intentional cultural erasure.
Yes.
And by the way, I mean, it's like they learned it from us. If you want to look at Minnesota or Maine
Yeah.
or other country or states where these populations have been placed that suddenly take over. So, yeah, I think that in Europe, the trend line, Russia's part of that, but there's also the internal problem that they have with these refugee groups, and they got to get that under control. And I think we're seeing the beginnings of that. I'm not quite sure, but all of this really hard anti-immigration politics that's going on in Europe, those parties are on the march in those countries. So we will see. And I also hope the United States doesn't fade out. um, we're doing okay. We're doing okay. I don't,
Yeah.
we got to get our debt situation under control for sure, because that's going to kill us. We have World War II level debt right now, more than like 100% of GDP debt. And, that's not going to fly in the long term. We just can't survive that. So Congress has to get its act together. And if we see this election upcoming go the wrong way, and suddenly the DSA is in charge of the House, well, they're not known for their budget cutting.
And no, they're not. And one advantage we have in this country, and I may have a little bit of unique insight into it, but we have the same. We've been invaded by immigrants, obviously, massive invasions of all these little Central Americans moving up here. So some south, but mostly central. But the advantage we have over England and France and all, the people invading England and France and Spain, they don't share, those invaders share none of the cultural identity of the people in England, France, and Spain. At least with us, the Latino immigrants, I don't call them Hispanics, that was invented by Nixon, and they derived the word Spix from it. So I say Latino. These invaders really do share most of our cultural beliefs. Now, let me add there as a caveat, they share none of our loyalty to this country. My wife does because she's an American citizen. But look, this is I know these people. They don't dislike America. They don't like America. They essentially don't consider themselves Americans. They are creating an entirely separate culture within our country. Fortunately, it shares some of the same values we do.
Yeah, the folks who want to come here and work and like send money back to the countries they came from and help support their families that way, that's something I can understand on an economic level. The people who want to come here from the Middle East, from Africa, Asia, and places like that, get on the dole, set up these corrupt, hospices and childcare centers and stuff like that, just to leech off the system corruptly and embezzle money and take things, and who just see the United States as a place to be looted. People who come from cultures where that's normal And so they
Yeah,
come over here and just loot us 8 ways from Sunday. Those are the people who got to go.
they got to
They
go.
got to get out now because they are pulling down millions and billions of dollars corruptly from our government, from the taxpayer, money that we can't afford to pay because we're already in debt, and just living high on the hog, and then buying politicians and buying influence so they can continue their corrupt practices. So anybody like that, we got to get rid of them.
We got to get rid. Well, I agree, hon. And you know what? Loot is the perfect term. Loot.
Yeah.
That is exactly what's happening. All right. In closing, give me your. First of all, thank you so much. This has just been incredible, incredible insights from you. Give me your number one international prediction at this point. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but just your number one. I don't care where it is, an international prediction that people need to watch for.
I don't know. Okay, I don't know if this is a prediction more than a hope, but I'm really rooting for a revolution in Iran. I really want to see the regime in charge there to go away. And I'm hoping that this new economic pressure campaign will create conditions for an uprising. And I hope to God that countries in the region are helping this get organized. I don't know if we are or if we have the capability anymore to do something like that, but I'm sure there are countries in the region who can. And that's what I really want to see. I mean, the stresses on Iran are immense right now. And I don't care what they say, they talk a good game.
Oh, yeah.
But what I really want to see is a revolution over there. And I hope we see it soon. Because the president alluded to this in a tweet recently, and, in a truth. And why was he alluding to that? Because it's not in the news. Well, maybe he knows something we don't know.
All right. Well, I hope you're right, and I share that hope. Dr. James Robbins, thank you. This has been fantastic, a great learning session, and a true pleasure. So thank you for joining us.
Carter, thanks. I'll see you again sometime.
Thank you. All right, folks. What an amazing guy. But I told you it's going to be an amazing interview. That is just absolutely stunning, some of the things he revealed. Prediction. Time to close. We're going over time. Let me give you my prediction real quick. Okay. I usually don't do economics because I'm not big on numbers, but let me give you a prediction. And I'm going to admit I'm stealing this from Jim Rickards. Okay. Those of you who follow Jim Rickards know this guy he's like a Swami in many regards. Very brilliant. I agree that gold is going to hit $10,000 by the end of the year. That's my prediction. Right now, what is it at 46? And most of the economists are predicting it's going to go up as high as 55. Rickard says 10,000. So I am going to steal his prediction and say, folks, might be a good time to invest in gold because I think it's going to head toward $10,000. Now, some of you say, well, that's not your prediction. That's Jim Rickards. Remember what W.C. Fields said, a thing worth having is worth cheating for. So there you go. There's a prediction a day. And that is a wrap. Thank you for joining us. Let's fight the good fight and let's win it. Let's do this thing.